Look up. Look at every human in your line of sight. Every single one of them is the same species you are. There is no one else. That has not been true for most of human history. Until 30,000 years ago, you would have shared this planet with at least 4 other kinds of people. Different bodies, different faces, different brains. One of them had a brain bigger than yours. And then, one by one, they all disappeared. Except you. So, what happened to them? For 300 years, science could not answer that question. Then a Swedish geneticist named Svante Pääbo did something nobody thought was possible. He read the DNA of a species that had been dead for 40,000 years. In 2022, he won the Nobel Prize for it. And what he found inside the bones is the answer. But to understand it, you have to meet them first. 400,000 years ago in Europe, a thicker, stronger version of you walked across the continent. The Neanderthals. Their average male was 166 centimeters tall and weighed 78 kilograms of mostly muscle. Their forearm bones were 50% thicker than ours. Their finger bones could crush yours in a handshake. Their eyebrows came forward on a single bony shelf. Their noses were wider, built for breathing Arctic air. Their lungs were larger than yours. They had fire. They had stone tools. They buried their dead with flowers. They cared for the wounded. The Shanidar man, a Neanderthal who lived to 50 with one eye, one arm, and a withered leg, survived only because his tribe fed him. And they had been doing all of that for 200,000 years before we ever showed up. Then a different kind of cousin, the Denisovans. We have almost no physical evidence they existed. A finger bone, a few teeth, a piece of a jaw. That is the entire material record of an entire species of humans. But the DNA inside those fragments told the whole story. The Denisovans lived from Siberia to the Tibetan Plateau to Southeast Asia. They survived altitudes that would have given a sapiens severe altitude sickness within hours. The gene that lets them do that is still inside the people of Tibet today. Then there were the small ones. On the Indonesian island of Flores, a team of archaeologists found the bones of an adult woman who was 1 meter tall. Homo floresiensis, a species of human 3.5 feet tall, with a brain the size of a grapefruit, who hunted dwarf elephants with stone tools on a single island in the Pacific. In South Africa, in a cave accessible only through an 18-centimeter vertical chute, archaeologists found over 1,500 fossils of a small-brained human called Homo naledi. Their brains were 1/3 the size of yours, but they may have been placing their dead in that chamber on purpose. A species with a brain 1/3 the size of ours, possibly burying its own. The Neanderthals had bigger brains than us. They were stronger than us. They were established in Europe for 200,000 years before we ever arrived. The Floresiensis hunted dwarf elephants with stone tools on a single island for nearly 50,000 years. The naledi placed their dead in a chamber, accessible only with fire, with a brain 1/3 the size of ours. Every one of these species had what should have been enough to survive. They had survived ice ages. They had survived volcanic winters. They had survived 750,000 years. And then, somewhere around 45,000 years ago, we walked out of Africa. Within 5,000 years, every other kind of human was gone. 5,000 years to erase 750,000. So what killed them? For decades, scientists offered 4 theories. Theory 1. The climate changed. Around 40,000 years ago, Europe slipped into an abrupt cold snap that crashed the large mammal herds Neanderthals hunted. They were food specialists. We were generalists. Theory 2. We brought diseases. We carried tropical pathogens north into Europe. Their immune systems had never seen them. Theory 3. We outcompeted them. We had projectile weapons that killed at distance. We had sewn clothes for Arctic cold. We had trade networks running hundreds of miles. They had stone tools that had not fundamentally changed in 200 millennia. Theory 4, and this is the one that broke the field. They did not all die. Some of them, we mated with. In 1997, a Russian archaeologist sent a single Neanderthal finger bone to a lab in Germany. The DNA inside it shocked the field. The finger belonged to a 13-year-old girl who lived 90,000 years ago. Her mother was Neanderthal. Her father was Denisovan. She is the only first-generation hybrid of two human species we have ever found. And because she existed, we know one thing for sure. Where the species met, they mated. In northern Spain, there is a cave called El Sidrón. In 1994, archaeologists found the bones of 13 Neanderthals deep inside it. 7 adults, 3 teenagers, 3 children. The youngest was 3 years old. They had all died on the same day, in the same event, 49,000 years ago. The skulls had been cracked open. The long bones split lengthwise for marrow. The mandibles cut for the tongues. The family was butchered and then eaten. By who? We do not know. It could have been other Neanderthals. It could have been us. But there is one thing we do know. The exact period when this family was butchered, 45 to 49,000 years ago, is the same window when sapiens and Neanderthals were having children together. We may have been killing them at the exact moment we were sleeping with them. And El Sidrón was not the first time our genus had done this. 800,000 years ago, in a different Spanish cave called Atapuerca, a different species of human, Homo antecessor, had been doing the same thing. Cannibalism is not new to our genus. It is older than our species. We were just the last species to do it. Look at your hand. If your ancestors came from anywhere outside Africa, 1 to 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. That is not metaphor, that is measured. Across the entire modern human gene pool, 20% of the Neanderthal genome survives. Your immune system, your skin color, your tolerance for sunlight, the shape of your nose, the texture of your hair. If you have red hair and freckles, the variant in your MC1R gene that gave you that came from a Neanderthal. Up to half of the genes that fight off Eurasian diseases inside your immune system are inherited from Neanderthals and Denisovans. When you walked out of Africa, you had no defense against the diseases waiting in the cold. Then you slept with Neanderthals, and their children carried the genes that kept you alive. A piece of every one of these things came from a species we drove to extinction. If you have ancestry from Tibet, you can hike at 14,000 feet without altitude sickness. That gene came from a Denisovan ancestor who walked out of Siberia 30,000 years ago. If you have Mesoamerican ancestry, a Neanderthal version of a gene called SLC16A11 doubles your risk for type 2 diabetes. If you have ever struggled with depression or with the rhythm of when you fall asleep and when you wake, those genes have been traced back to Neanderthal DNA too. Every single one of those cousins is still inside someone alive today. The last Neanderthal died in a cave on the southern coast of Spain around 40,000 years ago. She did not die alone. She had children, and those children had children. And one of them is sitting in your chair right now. Now look at every modern human around you again. Every one of them is carrying the salvageable parts of 3 or 4 species that should be extinct. They walk to work. They drink coffee. They text their friends. And every one of them is the last surviving form of what used to be many. They were stronger. We were faster. We won. But they did not all die. We absorbed them. They are us. The species ended. The genes did not.